The Kansas Jayhawks look to wrap up their non-conference slate undefeated as today we return home set to face off against UNLV. It's been a great start to the year for the Jayhawks. We're currently 2-0. We've climbed up all the way to number 13 in the top 25 rankings, coming off a really strong win last week in Champaign, Illinois against the Fighting Illini. We struggled in the first half of this game and actually trailed going into halftime, but that third quarter, we took it up a notch. 4 turnovers in the second half, 3 in the third quarter. It was a rough day for quarterback Luke Altmaier. On our side, Jalen Daniels threw for 3 scores. Devin Neal had another good game on the ground. The receiving game was very balanced, and the defense was tremendous, especially these freshmen. Damani Maxson, 10 tackles and the pick 6 to start the third quarter and give us momentum. Dekias Brinkley, 2 more sacks and a fumble force after getting 2.5 sacks in week 1 en route to winning the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week. His 4.5 sacks on the season are second in all of college football. And oh yeah, he's a true freshman. Along with these young guys, Taiwan Berryhill and Kobe Bryant each forced turnovers as well. And across the rest of college football, it was a really fascinating week. The headlines include the defending champion Michigan Wolverines getting shut out at the Big House by Texas, and Alabama losing their second straight game, this time to South Florida. Before we get into week 3, I do want to give you guys a quick recruiting update. A lot of our top targets are narrowing down their lists. Tolbert, Pepper, Brink, Jennings, and Manu Puna are all big-time targets of ours. They have narrowed their lists down to 5, and we are in first place for all of them, while Atia Kiaho, a defensive tackle, has narrowed his list down to 8. We're going to look at some high school film for the first time today, going over some of the most notable players on our board, particularly the guys whose recruitments are going very quickly, whom I expect to commit within the next couple of weeks. These 4 prospects will be on campus this week visiting against UNLV. We've got 2 quarterbacks and 2 pass rushers, and we'll start with the quarterbacks, given that this is such a position of need for us with Jalen Daniels gone at the end of the season. Clyde Poole and George Shembo are ranked very far apart from each other by recruiting services. Poole is a no-name 3-star who's not even a top 1,700 player in the country, whereas George Shembo is very nationally known. He's ranked in the top 100, but I do really like both of these guys. We'll start with Shembo, and look, it's unlikely that we land him. Alabama is the clear front runner on him. They obviously have a lot more recruiting resources than we do. There's a 90% chance he's committing to Alabama, but I still think it's worth putting points into him because given the unlikelihood that we do land him, this is somebody who could be our starting quarterback over the next few years and develop into one of the top quarterbacks in the country and possibly an NFL player down the line. Shembo played his first 3 years of high school ball in his hometown of Colonial Heights, Virginia, before transferring to high school powerhouse Bergen Catholic in upstate New Jersey. It's clear that this kid wants to play for winning programs. That's why he transferred to Bergen Catholic in the first place, and it's no wonder why he's interested in going to Alabama. 6'3", 223 pounds. He's a dynamic athlete, and he's got the physical tools to be a high-end quarterback here at the next level. He's impressive as a runner, and I think for a 17, 18-year-old kid, he's got a good feel as a passer. He goes through his progressions, and he doesn't make mistakes too often. Now, obviously, playing in college is going to be a different beast, but he's athletic, he's fast, he's got a strong arm, and I think he's pretty accurate. He checks off all the boxes, and that's why I think it's still worth us going after him. We need to completely blow him away on this visit in order to have any chance of landing him. His number 1 deal breaker is championship contender. We're a B+, Alabama's an A-, even though they're 0-2. I'm hoping that Alabama's early losses might sway him away from committing there, might make him think the Alabama dynasty is over, and want to come here, where he can become a hero in Lawrence, Kansas. We turned Jalen Daniels from a 2-star high school prospect into somebody who's going to be playing in the NFL. And hopefully George Shembo sees that. And the same goes for Clyde Poole. And this is an especially interesting recruitment because he's an in-state guy. He's from Hays, Kansas. He plays at Hays High School. I really want to focus on in-state recruiting within this series. Historically, the Jayhawks have really struggled recruiting talent from Kansas. And sure, Kansas is not making talent like Texas and Florida and California, but there are some really talented players from the state of Kansas, Clyde Poole in particular. It's a two-horse race between us and our rivals, Kansas State. We currently have the edge over the Wildcats, not to mention he'll be visiting our campus today, so if the visit goes well, I think he's going to commit pretty soon. We're already hard selling him, and as I look at his ratings, he looks like a really intriguing prospect, and to be honest, based on just these ratings shown here, I don't see a drastic difference between him and George Shembo. And Shembo's a guy who I very clearly really like. But I don't think Clyde Poole is that much worse given the information we have here, despite the fact that he's ranked significantly lower. Am I missing something? There's got to be a reason why he's the 1,742nd ranked player in the country, because this guy, to me, looks like somebody who should be ranked in the top 300 at minimum. So we sent some scouts to watch one of his games earlier in the season, and the kid looked really impressive. Coming from Hayes High School in Hayes, Kansas, not too far away from Lawrence, he was really good in this game. We saw his dynamic ability as a runner, 96 speed, 92 acceleration. We saw the arm strength. He's got a cannon. I think he's pretty accurate as well, but the question is, can he win consistently from the pocket? Oftentimes, if his first read is not open, he looks to run. And because of that, I want to turn him into more of a consistent passer. I think that's the one difference between him and Shembo, other than the fact that Shembo plays against certainly better competition. But otherwise, based on the information we know, Clyde Poole looks like a gem, and is a guy who I feel like should be more sought after. Let's look at these two edge rushers next, and we'll start with Angel Logan, who's the higher ranked of the two. He is a 4-star, but he's also a gem, which means he's probably going to be really, really good. It's a competitive 4-team race with LSU currently in front, but we are not far behind at all. And if this visit goes well, I think there's a real shot we can be the front runners to land him. The storyline with Logan is a fun one, because if you've been around the channel, you might know his brother, Zay Logan, from the Portland Trailblazers franchise on NBA 2K24. And if you remember the storyline with Logan, his experience going to college was also a very interesting one. He was a 5-star basketball recruit, but did not want to go to one of the big schools. He committed to Alabama State, but he got screwed out of his eligibility by the NCAA. Never played a minute at Alabama State, ended up getting drafted by us in the second round. Obviously, Zay is going to be in his younger brother's ear, and the hope is that Angel sees Zay Logan's path and realizes that he doesn't necessarily have to go to the big schools like LSU. While the two brothers did not go to the same high school, they both did go to high school in New Orleans, with Zay Logan playing at Newman, which is the same school that Texas quarterback Arch Manning went to. Of course, as I mentioned, Logan ended up being a second-round pick by the Trailblazers, and he ended up being a great player. A good role player, glue guy. He can shoot the hell out of the ball from 3. He can guard multiple positions, 6'10", long arms. He never was an all-star. He never put up the big numbers, but he was always a really solid guy. And at the end of his 17-year career, he got his jersey number retired by the Blazers. But what's so enticing about his younger brother? Well, I believe that Angel Logan is an NFL quality prospect if all goes well within the next couple of seasons. Logan has elite size, arm length, speed, and strength coming off the edge. He's an SEC athlete, and I see why teams like LSU, Arkansas, and Texas are all in the race for him. Logan has a wide array of pass rushing moves. He mostly wins with power, but he can win with some finesse and quickness off the edge as well. He needs to be more consistent as a run defender, but otherwise, he checks off all the boxes. This is somebody who would start on day one for us. And again, I think there's a real shot he ends up being a high NFL draft pick if developed properly. Ben Bieria is a 3-star, but I view him more as a 4-star player. It's a 3-horse race with Arizona and Boise State, but we are very clearly the front runners here. And if our visit goes well, I think we're going to have him just about locked up. Bieria is a fringe top 500 player in the country, so he's ranked very highly for being a 3-star. And he's a gem, which should likely help his development track. Bieria plays at Memorial High School in Port Arthur, Texas, and this is a football school. They've delivered guys like Jamal Charles, the former All-Pro running back, and Hall of Fame head coach Jimmy Johnson, just to name a few. Bieria isn't necessarily an elite athlete, but he's a pretty solid one. This is somebody who knows how to win with finesse off the edge. I think if he can become a little bit stronger, then the sky is the limit for him. And he's a guy who I'm really excited about the likelihood of his commitment within the next couple of weeks. Let's now figure out how we're going to divvy up some of these points. With Clyde Poole, we don't really have to do much. We have his 3 check marks. With George Shemba, we only have 2 of the 3, but there's only one combination here of pitches that works. Even if there was multiple pitches that work, I still know which one it is because his ultimate deal breaker is championship contender, and that's the one green check mark that we have not uncovered. So we already knew going into it that that was something he prioritizes. With Ben Biera, we now have his 3, so we're going to switch from sell the house over to hard sell. He wants TV time, which seems to be a very popular pitch between a lot of players. With Seth Jennings, we were able to get the 3 pretty quickly. Jennings is a guy who we're probably going to look at his film next week, being that we're going to schedule his visit pretty soon. Sheldon Brink, we have 2 green check marks, but there's only 1 left, playing time, so that has to be the 3rd. With Dorian Pepper, another receiver, we've got his 3, so we're going to switch from sell the house to hard sell. And with all of these switches from sell the house to hard sell, we're gaining an additional 10 hours with each player. So we're opening up quite a few. We entered today with 160. Now we have 220 recruiting hours that we can divvy up. The one guy who we don't have his 3 check marks for yet is Trent Aurora. I'm hoping that this one gets resolved pretty quickly because it's a 2-horse race between us and Ole Miss. Ole Miss, of course, plays in Starkville, Mississippi, his hometown, and his number 1 deal breaker is proximity to home. So because of that, we're still focusing on sending the house with him, but otherwise, we're not really sending the house on many other players. So with our 220 points that we have remaining, we've got a number of guys who are looking to come in for visits. We can't schedule these guys to come in this week, but they will be able to come in week 5 for our game against TCU. There's 5 players here who apply, and we'll start with Jazir Tolbert, the 2nd-ranked player in the state of Kansas. We still have to sell the house for him as well. It's currently a 2-horse race between us and Kansas State. We have a pretty big lead here. He's a 4-star, top 200 player in the nation, so I'm really hoping we land him. Wide receiver Dorian Pepper, we've got a pretty comfortable lead here. It's only us and UL Lafayette, so I think it's pretty likely that we will ultimately land him. He's going to come during week 5 as well against TCU. And with him visiting that week, that makes it a competitive visit for our other receiver, Sheldon Brink. We have a pretty big lead with Brink. It's a 2-horse race between us and Indiana. It doesn't seem like they're super interested, so I am confident that we're going to land him as well. I am going to still have him visit the same week as Pepper, even though it's a competitive visit. I want these 2 guys to be around each other because I think there's a good chance that both of them are going to come here, and they're both going to be in the same receiving room, so obviously I want these guys to get to know each other and hopefully become good pals. Seth Jennings will come here during week 5 as well. I'm hoping that we'll be able to lock up his commitment after this visit. And then cornerback Vilami Manupuna, we just took the lead over Texas Tech, and I do not want them getting the lead back. He'll be visiting in week 5 as well. I think we're going to look at all 5 of those guys' film next week, and I'm hoping that some combination of those 5 will be committing to our school pretty soon. From there, we're going to be switching our remaining hours around. I'm going to put more focus into JUCO receiver Mario Maddox. There isn't a lot of interest in him, but I still want to get this battle wrapped up pretty quickly because I think he could be one of our best receivers over the next 2 years, and he's a guy who I don't want to risk losing out on. So that's how we're going to use our 700 recruiting hours this week, although we are going to add one more player onto the board, and it's a kicker, Anthony Escalante. We're not going to do anything with him quite yet, but given our kicking woes over the first couple of weeks of the season, I don't think it's a bad idea to put one on the board. So with that, we can now prepare for our matchup here, week 3 against UNLV, with the 4 prospects whose film we went over all on campus for this game. UNLV is no slouch. They're one of the better Group 5 teams in the country. They're 2-0 up to this point, and their team overall rating is only 3 points lower than ours. They beat Houston on the road, and they beat FCS Midwest last week. Their win a week ago isn't super convincing, but they're still 2-0, and they're still one of the best teams in the Mountain West, and I don't want to take them lightly particularly because they have one of the top Group 5 playmakers in the country with wide receiver Ricky White III, and they've got a good run game led by sophomore running back Jayden Thomas. This is a really good group of skill position players, easily the best one we've seen so far. It's a matter of what type of quarterback play they'll be getting from Connor O'Neal, the redshirt junior who ultimately won the QB battle in the offseason. Interestingly, they haven't really used Ricky White too much in the offense. He only has one catch so far, so I imagine they're really going to look to get him involved this week, which means we need to put an extra emphasis on him. One more order of business. I am switching the passing type for this game. I'm still experimenting with some of the new passing versions, so I wanted to try out the placement today to see how it goes. So with that, we'll get this show started. Week 3 here at the booth. 2-0, number 13 ranked Kansas Jayhawks are set to face off against the also 2-0 UNLV Rebels here for the final non-conference game of the regular season. The Jayhawks are looking to win this one, improve to 3-0, and put ourselves in a good spot going in to Big 12 play next week, starting at West Virginia. So let's take a look at the UNLV offense. Ricky White III is one of the most dynamic players in college football. Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson are both going to have their hands full with him today, but I'm confident that both of them will be able to make some plays with him. O'Neal loses yardage early, getting smothered by the nickel corner, Caleb Purdy. 3rd and 10 now for UNLV. O'Neal looks downfield. It's broken up, incomplete. The deflection in the secondary by Bryant. Let's take a look at the Kansas offense, who's scored 75 points over the first 2 weeks of the year. Jalen Daniels on 3rd and 8 under pressure, and he throws it away. Quick stop for the Rebels. That's going to force a punt, and UNLV gets it back on offense as they look to strike first. Jayden Thomas with the handoff. He does not have any room to the left side, and he loses yardage. Damani Maxson, the true freshman who had a huge game last week, brings him down. On 3rd and 8, O'Neal looks downfield. He's got his man. It's Ricky White III for a gain of 21. As I said going into this game, they're going to look to get Ricky White involved early and often. Up the middle, Jayden Thomas with a huge run. He gets nearly 20. The Kansas run defense has been incredible over the first 2 weeks of the year, but so far, Jayden Thomas has looked really impressive so far for UNLV. He gets it back here on the very next play, jukes away from the safety, and he brings it all the way to the 5. What a start for Jayden Thomas. He's already over 50 yards on the day, and now we'll see if UNLV can punch it in. 2nd and goal, O'Neal hands it off to Thomas, and he is smothered for a loss of yards in the backfield by the senior defensive tackle, Javier Derritt. 3rd and goal now for the Rebels. Huge play here. O'Neal looks to throw it, looks for the end zone. It's caught for a score. It's Jacob DeJesus with the touchdown, and UNLV leads 7-0. DeJesus has been their best receiver so far this year over Ricky White, and he continues to make plays as it's 7-0. Daniels looks short for Devin Neal. Whoop! Jukes by 1. Whoop! Jukes by 2. And gets the first down. We really utilized Devin Neal a lot as a receiver last week, and we're going to look to continue to do so today. On 3rd down, the pass for Luke Grimm is broken up. Another stop for the UNLV defense, and they'll get it back. The Jayhawk offense off to a slow start here in the first. UNLV back with it. Thomas is lit up for a loss of yardage. Once again, it's Caleb Purdy who brings him down, his 2nd tackle for loss here in the first quarter. 3rd and 7 now for UNLV. It's a play-action fake. O'Neal looking downfield. It's broken up by Kobe Bryant and Devin Dye. If only one of those guys went for the ball, I think they would have gotten the interception, but unfortunately they both did. Kansas back with it. It's a handoff here to the right side for Luke Grimm. And the Grim Reaper is out of bounds, but not before getting the first. Nice play there by Grimm, who had a busy game last week with 6 catches. Fake to Grimm. Short pass is caught by Grimm, who jukes away from the defender. Really nice play after the catch there from Luke Grimm, and that'll wrap up the first quarter. Kansas did not look too good in that first quarter. The run defense was poor. The offense started off slow. We haven't really been able to run the ball, and the passing game's been inefficient. But we're starting to really get something going here in the air, and hopefully that continues into the second. Devin Neal with a nice juke move. He brings it inside the 10, making it 1st and goal. Big run for Devin Neal, and we'll see if Kansas can punch it in. As on 2nd and goal, Daniels scrambling away, has rushing room, and walks it in for the rushing touchdown. Jalen Daniels with his 2nd rushing score of the year, and this game is tied at 7. Even when nobody's open, it is certainly an advantage having an athlete like Jaylen Daniels, because he can turn what would be, for most quarterbacks, a throwaway into a huge play. As we look at this replay once again, Daniels is able to split between the two defensive linemen, and then from there, there's nobody between him and the end zone. And even if there was, he'd probably outrun them anyway. And with that, this game is tied at 7. Huge drive from the offense as UNLV gets it back. Up the middle, Jaden Thomas breaks the tackle from Brooks and gets another first down. 8 carries for 69. Nice rushing yards on the day for Thomas. 3rd and 1, UNLV looks to throw it. Short pass is broken up. A huge hit from the senior safety, Marvin Grant, laying the boom on Ricky White, forcing the punt. Kansas back with it. Daniels under a lot of pressure, rolls out to the left. He is still on the run, and he will fire for Quentin Skinner in what might be the coolest gain of 8 I've ever seen. Couple plays later, it's first down. Daniels up the middle, has an open man. It's once again the Grim Reaper, Luke Grimm, looking to kill the defense's hopes and dreams as he brings it inside the 30. 2nd and 6, Devin Neal going backwards. You don't see that too often. It's a loss of 2, and that'll make it a 3rd and 8. Daniels looks to throw it. Up the middle, short throw is caught. That's Skinner. He gets around 5. You could certainly make the argument for Kansas to go for it, but they just want to take the lead. 41-yarder for Owen Piper-Gerdes is up, and it is good. And so the Kansas Jayhawks take the lead. It's 10-7, their first lead of the game. UNLV gets it back, 2nd and 6, nearing the 2-minute mark as it's a handoff for the backup running back, Michael Allen. He gets a nice run of his own that will go for the first down, moving the chains. 3rd and 4, O'Neal looks to throw it. Under pressure, throws it into the ground. Dylan Wutke, the grad transfer from Youngstown State, is there with the pressure. Kansas back with it. Daniels on the run. Connects for Lawrence Arnold, who gets the first down to around the 45. Looks like it's an option. Late pitch for Devin Neal. Breaks off the first tackle. Down the sidelines. Devin Neal gets around 27 yards. One of his biggest plays of the year. And that'll bring Kansas into the red zone. 3rd and 4. Clock is ticking. It's a screen. Put the ball in your best player's hands and let him make a play. Devin Neal with the first down. He gets it out of bounds to stop the clock. 1st and goal now here for Kansas, looking to make it a 2-score game. Daniels looks short. It's the tight end, Jared Casey, who walks in for the score. 17 unanswered points here in the second for the Jayhawks, and they take a 2-score lead late here in the first half. Even though the offense really struggled in the first quarter, they have picked things up quickly here in the second, as UNLV is going to get a gain of a few there, and that'll wrap up the first half. Slow start, but we really picked it up, very much like the Illinois game, where we struggled really the entire first half and flipped a switch in the 3rd quarter. Jaylen Daniels looking electric as always. He started the game 1 for 5, and since then I don't think he's thrown an incompletion. Devin Neal on the ground started slow, but he had an awesome second quarter. And defensively, we haven't really been able to stop the run, but the pass defense has been really good. Ricky White only has 1 catch so far, and Connor O'Neal really hasn't been all that effective, with the exception of some of those possessions early. So overall, I think Kansas is in a good spot. We've got the momentum, but we certainly don't want to let the pedal off the metal, as that brings us into the 3rd quarter. The Jayhawks will start with the ball, as it is 3rd down and 6. Jaylen Daniels looks to throw it, looking up the middle, and it's incomplete. Luke Grimm was open, but he misfires on the pass. UNLV gets it back. Play action on 3rd down, and O'Neal is sacked by guess who? Zacchaeus Brinkley does it again. 5.5 sacks for the true freshman. This kid lives in the backfield, and Kansas forces the punt. They get it back. What a move by Devin Neal, who somehow gets around 14 yards on that play. This kid really is a magician. 10 carries for 85 yards. Talk about efficiency. It's an RPO screen here for Quentin Skinner, and he gets the first down, pushed out of bounds. Skinner only had 1 catch through the first 2 games of the year. Today he's been a lot more active. Pitch to the outside. It's Daniel Highshot Jr. Gets a couple, and he appears to be banged up after the play. Certainly not ideal. He's one of our more important depth players offensively. Looked like he hurt his elbow, and that'll certainly impact with wear and tear. 3rd and 6, Daniels on the run. What a throw! And it's hauled in by Quentin Skinner for the first down. Following play, Daniels wants it all. He's got it all! Trevor Wilson with his first touchdown of the year, and the Jayhawks add to their lead. He thinks it's night-night time already here in the third. Jalen Daniels putting on another show, his third all-purpose touchdown of the game, and Kansas leads it 24-7. Some of those throws on that drive from Jalen Daniels are as impressive as you'll find. On the run, threading the needle with multiple defensive backs in the area, and he's still able to find the window for these receivers to make plays. It's now 24-7. On first down, it's a handoff for Allen, and he is smothered in the backfield. Caleb Purdy with his third TFL of the game. He's done a really good job today playing around the line of scrimmage, making plays in the run game. 3rd and 8, O'Neal looks to go downfield. He throws it right into the hands of Devin Dye, who intercepts it with a big play after the catch. And Devin Dye is already going to put Kansas in the red zone to the 15. Another takeaway from the defense, and we'll see if the Jayhawks can capitalize with such great starting field position. Devin Neal to the outside on the first play of the drive, and it's nearly the only play of the drive as he's pushed out at the 1, now over the century mark in yardage on the ground. Since he just missed out on the end zone there, we want to get him his score, and sure enough, Devin Neal punches it in for the rushing touchdown, his third of the year, and it is now 31-7. It really is night-night time here in Lawrence. Kansas putting the Rebels to bed here in the third. UNLV gets it back. They've had nothing go their way since the start of the second. O'Neal under pressure, he's sacked. Javier Darrett leads the way. He's joined by Dylan Wadke and Dekias Brinkley, who now has 6 sacks on the year. Kansas back with it on second down. Here's Devin Neal to the outside with another impressive run, and he's pushed out at midfield, getting the first down. Now from the 50, Neal in motion. It's going to be a swing pass. Devin Neal has space, jukes away from the defender, breaks a tackle, and another, down the field! Devin Neal, you are not from this planet! Strike the pose! Touchdown, Kansas! A 50-yard receiving touchdown for Devin Neal, where he juked away from one defender and broke tackles from about 4 more. This guy is a magician. Easily one of the most dynamic players in the country, and that play encapsulates why. There's a reason why this kid's going to be a top 50 draft pick in the NFL next year, and that's because he can change an NFL offense just like he's changing ours with plays like this. He is impossible to bring down. He makes the first guy miss and the second guy all the way up to the back end. It's 38-7 now, and things are going to go from bad to worse for UNLV. Big play there on third down by Marvin Grant. The Rebels going to look to punt it here on fourth down, as this one will be let go by Luke Grimm, and it will stop rolling at the 1. I don't think I've ever seen a better punt in my life. That's not even the 1. That's like the 1/10 yard line. So Kansas has to get out of this situation, and you know who's the guy to do it? Devin Neal. He starts with a gain of around 6 to open things up. 2nd and 4 now. Back to Neal. Jukes away from the defender. Gets the first down and knocks Kansas out of safety ranges. That'll wrap up the third quarter. 38-7. And the Jayhawks have outscored UNLV 38-0 over the last 2 quarters. I thought this was going to be a close competitive game, but given that it's a blowout, I would imagine this is probably the last drive we see the starters. 2nd and 7. Jalen Daniels loses 4. Daniels really has not been able to get much on the ground with the exception of his early rushing touchdown. 3rd and 11, short pass caught by Luke Grimm. That'll go for a first down, and the Jayhawks will move the chains, getting another conversion. 3rd and 13, it's a screen here. Quentin Skinner gets around 5. So that'll lead to a stop, and now the Rebels have it back. Both teams have brought their backups into the game. Short throw up the middle is caught. The pass there from the new quarterback, Cameron Friel, the senior from Hawaii. Up the middle, nice move, goes for a first down. That's Kylan James, another senior. And now UNLV has it near the 50. Friel under pressure, and he is sacked. It's another true freshman. This time the play is made by Graydon Grimes, his first career sack. 2nd and 23. Friel under pressure. He's sacked by Grimes again, and he's joined by some company as well. Marcus Calvin with half a sack as well. This kid, Graydon Grimes, is making an impression. 2 TFLs and a sack and a half already. Third down and very long for UNLV. 3rd and 28 to be exact. Wide open downfield. It's Landon Rogers, and he gets 50. Completely burning the freshman corner, Jalen Todd. 2nd and 6 now for UNLV after their longest play of the game. It's going to be a reverse that will not work at all, but hey, I respect the creativity, as that'll make it a 3rd and 8 now with roughly 3 to go. We'll see if UNLV can score for the first time since the first quarter. Friel under pressure. He is sacked again. Who is this Graydon Grimes kid, and why is he taking over the game? 3 TFLs and 2 sacks for Grimes. He's joined by Champ Tompkins, the true freshman, who gets half a sack of his own. 4th and 14. UNLV says, screw it, might as well go for it. And the pass is picked off downfield. Jalen Todd makes up for his lapse in coverage earlier, and he'll fall down at the 10, not wanting to do anything stupid with the ball. So from there, Kansas is going to look to chew some clock here over the next 2+ minutes and try to end this game. Isaiah Marshall in at quarterback. Devin Neal's still in the game as he gets this carry. Doesn't get much. And he is hurt, grabbing at what looks like his left arm. That is not good news. And even though it's not a serious injury, with wear and tear, that's likely going to affect him going into next week. 4th and 2. We're going to go for it, and we get it. We figure the sooner we end this game, the better. Devin Neal already got hurt in garbage time. We don't need anybody else to get hurt as well. 38-7 is your final. An impressive win for the Jayhawks. Jalen Daniels looked like a rock star out there. He's been legitimately incredible here through 3 weeks. 250 yards in the air, 76% completion percentage, 3 passing touchdowns, and another one on the ground. Jalen Daniels has looked like a legit NFL quarterback so far, albeit we haven't played against the best of competition, and it will certainly get harder starting next week. But we passed the non-conference tests, if you will, with flying colors. 3 blowouts, even though the last 2 games we started slow. In the 2nd and 3rd quarter, we outscored these guys 38-0 before bringing in the backups. We ran the ball down their throats. The passing game was, again, brilliant, and we didn't turn the ball over today. We've had some fumbling issues earlier in the year, but not today. Jalen Daniels was awesome. He started the game 1 for 5, which would mean he went 18 of 20 the rest of the way. He was not missing throws, and he was making big-time throws the entire game. I would argue Devin Neal was more impressive, though. 118 yards on the ground. He led the team in receiving as well. Of course, he had the big 50-yard touchdown in the 3rd quarter, finishing with 2 touchdowns and almost 200 yards from scrimmage. Once again, it was very balanced in terms of the receiving. Nobody other than Neal really stood out, but everybody got the rock. The offensive line was phenomenal. Daniels did not get sacked once, and the defense has allowed 23 points through 3 weeks. That's the best in college football. Graydon Grimes stole the show at the end with 3 TFLs and 2 sacks. And hey, we didn't miss any kicks in this game. As for UNLV, they really did not have much going for them. You know it's bad when the backup, who played 1 drive, had more passing yards than the starter. That 50-yard passing play was more passing yards than the rest of the team got the entire game. Jaden Thomas was good. I got to give him a ton of credit. Nobody else was, though. Their leading receiver had 2 catches. Obviously, the one kid had 50 yards, but nobody else was that impressive. Ricky White only got the ball once. Their offensive line was honestly not that bad, especially in the run game. But their defense struggled. The passing game struggled. They really did not have much going for them, and we were able to steamroll them from the 2nd quarter onwards. An impressive win here for the Jayhawks, who now sit at 3-0, going into conference play next week, traveling to Morgantown. But before we wrap things up, let's take a look around the nation here in Week 3. We ended up with some pretty exciting games. Some notable matchups include SEC play really going quickly with Georgia, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Florida. Big 12 play is kicking off this week as well. But beforehand, though, we got some exciting news. Graydon Grimes won the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week. After not coming into the game until halfway through the 4th quarter, apparently he played well enough to win the Conference Player of the Week. But that's not it. Graydon Grimes also won the National Defensive Player of the Week. There was not a defensive player in college football who had a better game in Week 3 than this kid, Graydon Grimes, who played 11 snaps. He didn't come into the game until halfway through the 4th quarter. And these 11 snaps were literally the first of his entire collegiate career. None of this makes sense. I'm not complaining, obviously. It's very exciting to win the National Defensive Player of the Week, but this is not how I would have expected it to happen. Anyway, let's take a look at our recap for Week 3. We'll start things off here in South Carolina. The Gamecocks 0-2. Got to get a win, facing off against 1-1 LSU. And the Gamecock offense was really impressive. Rocket Sanders had a huge game on the ground, but the guy who really stole the show was slot receiver Amari Higgins-Bruce. 3 catches for 113 yards and 3 touchdowns. He scored every time he got the ball, leading the Gamecocks to their first win of the year, 24-38. I wasn't too worried about LSU after their Week 1 loss against USC. They were a 2-point conversion away from winning. But this is a much more concerning result. Garrett Nussmeier turned the ball over twice. They could not run the ball at all. And their defense was a disaster. Lanaris Sellers, the redshirt freshman, had a great game through the air. Rocket Sanders averaged over 10 yards a pop. And again, Amari Higgins-Bruce had himself a day. 98 yards after the catch. That really is impressive. The Ole Miss Rebels have looked very vulnerable for the first 2 weeks of the year. They've won both games, but they didn't look all that impressive. Today was much of the same against Wake Forest. They won this game, but they did not play particularly well. Ultimately taking this one with a huge touchdown here from Jackson Dart, breaking the sack, winning it by the final score of 38-32. Wake Forest is not some particularly good team. Ole Miss has barely beaten 3 bad teams in a row, and with them coming into SEC play soon, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit concerned. This is one of the most talented teams in the country, but they've been asleep during non-conference play, the exact opposite of our team. Sure, we played against some not-so-great opponents, better than the teams that Ole Miss has played, but we found a way to dominate those games. Horatio Fields leads the way for Wake Forest despite coming up short. Speaking of teams who have been asleep in non-conference play, Alabama's 0-2. Things are going to get ugly if they don't win this game against Wisconsin. And this game was awfully competitive in the first half, but Alabama would run away with it in the second half. Jalen Milroe had his best game of the year. Kendrick Law scored twice. And the Tide finally win their first game of the year, 30-20 in Camp Randall against the Badgers. Alabama needed this win bad after losing to Western Kentucky and South Florida. If they lose this game, everything is falling off the rails, and people are calling for Kalen DeBoer's head. They probably still are anyway, but at least they finally add a win to the win column. Next up, let's head down to Kansas State. The Wildcats have underperformed this year. That's the case with both of these teams. Kansas State and Arizona State got to start Big 12 playoff right, and there's one young player who really stole the show. Tessie Toya McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, flipping into the end zone with 150 scrimmage yards and 2 all-purpose touchdowns, leading Arizona to the win over Kansas State, 31-21, and Arizona's back in the top 25. They needed this win badly after not looking good through the first couple weeks of the year, but now they get back on track. They start 1-0 in Big 12 play, and they're right back feeling good about themselves. Tessie Toya McMillan, I think, has positioned himself to be the first receiver off the board in this year's class based on how he's played this year and his long-term physical profile. As for Kansas State, a pretty so-so game for Avery Johnson. The Wildcats now out of the top 25. They start this year under 500 in conference play. The team who beat Kansas State last week, Tulane, looks to upset another victim, Oklahoma. And believe it or not, they would. The Tulane Green Wave are for real, ultimately winning this game on the road in Norman, 24-21 against the Sooners. How is Tulane not ranked? They look like easily the best Group 5 team in America right now. Their defense was able to really limit Jackson Arnold. Gavin Sawchuk scored 3 times, but he was really inefficient. And as for the Green Wave, Ty Thompson was phenomenal. Not to say Oregon made the wrong decision by choosing Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel over him, but Ty Thompson is the real deal. And Tulane looks like the team to beat, not just in the American, but in Group 5 altogether. The number 2 ranked Georgia Bulldogs head to Kentucky to face off against the Wildcats. Let's see if this Kentucky team could contend this year. Short answer, no. This game was not pretty at all. Even though Georgia hasn't looked phenomenal so far this season, barely beating Clemson in Week 1, they reminded everybody that they are the favorite for the national title, 33-7. Disastrous game for Kentucky. I don't know how they only dropped 3 spots. I get it if this game was close, but it really wasn't. Carson Beck wasn't even that impressive. He wasn't bad, but he certainly didn't necessarily win them the game. It was more so a dominant team effort across the board. Oscar Delp with a big game. Dominic Lovett's been one of the best receivers in the country. He was really impressive. The Georgia transfer, Brock Vandegrift, in his revenge game was terrible. 40% completion percentage, 2 interceptions. He had nothing go well against his former school. So our rivals, Kansas State, have not started the year off too well. They're 1-2. Let's check in on our other rival, the Missouri Tigers, who obviously lost to an FCS team earlier in the year. You'd think that they'd be extra focused for some of these non-conference games. But not so fast, partner, as Lee Corso would say. Bowling Green comes into Mizzou and knocks off the Tigers 26-14, winning this game by 2 scores. So it appears that both of our biggest rivals kinda suck. I know, how heartbreaking. I'm so sad by this revelation. Thomas Castellanos didn't even necessarily have a great game through the air. It was the ground game that won it for Boston College today as they improved to 2-1. They ran it down Missouri's throats, and their defense was great. Brady Cook did not have a particularly good performance. Luther Burden, who's competing with Tessitoya McMillan at Arizona to be the top receiver off the board, only caught the ball twice. Sure, he made the most of those 2 catches, but Missouri's got to find ways to give him the ball more than twice. Otherwise, they're not going to win much. The Tennessee Volunteers, coming off a huge win last week against NC State, look to keep the train rolling against Kent State. This game ended up being really competitive, though. Kent State is one of the worst teams in the country, but Kent State would go into Knoxville and knock off the Vols. The star of the show, senior receiver Jack Colson. He is the 7th highest rated receiver on their roster. And you know you're probably not a very good player as a wide receiver when A, you're Caucasian, and B, when you're wearing the number 35. That just screams walk on. Yet he torched the Tennessee defense today, leading to the win for Kent State. Really strong game from their quarterback, Tommy Olatowski. He threw for 2 touchdowns, completing 74% of his passes and rushing for another. But Colson was the star of the show, a 65 overall redshirt senior, who again is wearing the number 35. As a wide receiver, if you're wearing that number, that just means it's time to put the fries in the bag. As for Tennessee, Nico Iamaleava wasn't bad. He's definitely not the reason why they lost this game. The rest of the team just ultimately let them down. 2 more games to go, easily the 2 best games of the week. Texas A&M, number 25, heads to Gainesville to face off against the number 23 ranked Gators. So this game was tied at 31. Going into overtime, Florida got the ball first, and they made some noise quickly. Wide receiver Chimere Dike with his 2nd touchdown of the game. Texas A&M gets it back, and they would respond quickly. Noah Thomas with his 6th receiving touchdown over the last 2 weeks. That brings us into overtime number 2. Reuben Owens, the former 5-star running back with plenty of space into the end zone, but now you gotta go for 2. And surely A&M would give it right back to the star running back, Reuben Owens, who would complete the octopus, scoring all 8 points on the possession. But now Florida gets the opportunity to match. Down by 8, they need a touchdown and a 2 to tie it. Mertz looking to throw it here on 3rd down. He's got Chimere Dike, his 3rd receiving touchdown of the game. But now they've got to go for 2. Mertz cannot find anybody open, under pressure, and he's sacked by Shamar Turner, who wins it. Gigamags, 46-44. Texas A&M with a huge win over Florida. Graham Mertz played a strong game. He did throw 2 interceptions, but he still performed pretty well. And Chimere Dike, the senior receiver, has had a really good start to the year. He scored 3 times. Elijah Badger was really good as well. As for A&M, Connor Wigman has really rebounded since his rough Week 1 performance against Notre Dame, where he was picked off 3 times. Reuben Owens with a big game on the ground. He scored twice, including the go-ahead 2-point conversion. And then Noah Thomas, he's caught 9 passes over the last 2 weeks, and he's ended up in the end zone 6 times. Is that good? I think that's good. And finally, the Apple Cup between Washington State and Washington. We had a lot of early season rivalries this week, and this game ended up being the closest. So we'll start things off in double overtime, 31-31, as Washington delivers the first punch. Will Rogers with his 5th touchdown of the game to make it 37-31, but now you got to go for two. Jonah Coleman gets the rock for the Huskies, and he is in. It's an 8-point lead for Washington, and this game comes down to a fourth down for the Cougars. John Mateer on the run with a dot for the end zone, but now Washington State has got to get the 2-point conversion to keep the game alive, and ultimately they would fall short as Pugliasi does not get in, and Washington hangs on 37-39 to improve to 3-0. Will Rogers of the big game, he did throw 2 picks, but he also threw for 5 touchdowns en route to the victory for the Huskies. It was a very balanced effort receiving-wise. Denzel Boston had a big game, as did Quentin Moore, and the freshman Rashid Williams had that touchdown in double overtime to put him ahead. John Mateer threw 3 scores for the Cougars, but ultimately it was not enough. Washington State falls to 0-3 on the season, despite giving their rivals a run for their money. Let's go over some other notable scores around the rest of college football. There were some interesting ones. As I mentioned, a lot of rivalry games this week. Michigan gets back on the win column with a semi-close game against Arkansas State. Miami returns to the top 25, beating Ball State unconvincingly, only winning by 4. Michigan State is now ranked after their bad season last year. Big win for Oklahoma State. Utah State loses to Utah. Oregon obliterates Oregon State in the Civil War, 58-0. Yikes. As for some of the non-top 25 games, Illinois squeaks away from Central Michigan. Arkansas loses to UAB. That's a bad loss for the Razorbacks. I was hyping up NC State going into the year. I thought they played pretty well last week against Tennessee, but they ended up losing to Louisiana Tech. Looks like NC State and Tennessee might both be a little bit overrated. Iowa gets upset by Troy. That's a surprise. Indiana's 3-0 as they beat UNLV. Virginia Tech drops 51 on Old Dominion. Nice win for Baylor over a solid Wyoming team. Houston is able to squeak away from Rice. Miami of Ohio blows out Cincinnati. Pitt beats West Virginia in the backyard brawl. And UCF beats TCU by 1. 2 teams in the Big 12 who I believe are going to be better than people expect. And they ended up playing a pretty competitive game. Let's look at the new top 25 polls. The Jayhawks move up to number 11, jumping Tennessee and Oklahoma after their early season losses. Texas stays at number 1. I would probably put Georgia back there. I get that Texas beat Michigan in the Big House, but Georgia probably deserves that spot. Otherwise, the top 8 is unchanged. I'm excited about Utah, Oklahoma State next week, though. 2 top 10 teams within the Big 12. That's going to be a really fun game. SMU is now ranked. I think they're going to have a good year in the ACC. Michigan State is now ranked along with Miami, Arizona, Colorado, and Kentucky, with a number of teams dropping out. We've got a lot of movement in the Heisman race. Dylan Gabriel threw 2 incompletions and threw for 4 touchdowns, so he is now well-deservedly in first place. Quinn Ewers moves up to second for Texas as Shedeur Sanders drops to third. And we've got another Big 12 guy on the list, Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati. I don't know why he's here. He's had a good year, but Cincinnati just lost by 20 to Miami of Ohio. I get I hyped them up going into the year, but still, Cincinnati's 1-2. And then Trayshawn Holden holds that last spot. Who is this guy? Ross Fournette, 9 catches for 244 yards and 5 touchdowns. What a game, winning the Offensive Player of the Week. And then Graydon Grimes wins the Defensive Player of the Week. I still don't know how he got there. You can't tell me of the 130 teams who play college football, there wasn't one defensive player who had a better game than this kid who played 11 snaps, the first 11 snaps of his life. But again, not complaining. So Big 12 play is now up and running. We've already had 3 games so far, and this week we're going to see a lot of in-conference games. We head to Morgantown to face off against West Virginia, amongst many games within the Big 12 Conference. And I feel like these first 3 games, I don't want to discredit them, but it was kind of our preseason. Unless we were to go undefeated and lose the conference championship, I don't think we're making the playoffs with an at-large bid. I think if we want to make it, we have to win the Big 12 championship. So because of that, not to say these first 3 games didn't matter, but it was kind of a tune-up for us. And now these 9 games coming up are our real season, with the goal of making the Big 12 championship to put ourselves in a position to win that game and go to the college football playoff. And that starts this week on the road against West Virginia. They're 1-2, but they're no slouch. They almost beat Penn State earlier in the year. They've got some really good players. C.J. Donaldson, the big running back, he is a large human being who we might have trouble bringing down. Hope everybody enjoyed the episode, though. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.